Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Thursday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. It only took 2 days for the shit to hit the fans over yet another DCU or DC Extended Universe controversy. 2 days after those fabulous slate announcements from James and Peter, and they were really exciting and fabulous for me. I'm still buzzing about them, but that old situation, and I'll discuss with you what that old situation is very shortly, has made a lot of people angry yet again. I'm quite surprised you're surprised about this situation, because I have explained and clarified this on multiple occasions. But because most of you don't follow my channel, many DC fans don't watch my channel, you're not well educated. I did try and educate you about this situation. Now, this controversy hasn't been helped because there's been some kind of TV spot for Shazam! Fury of the Gods where we see a little bit of Wonder Woman, just a little bit. Now, they really want you to know that Wonder Woman's in Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Here's a question for you. Comments down below. Do you think Wonder Woman will do more for Shazam! Fury of the Gods than Superman did for Black Adam? No, it's all right. I mean, you can comment. I like the interactions. I need them, right? But I'll give you an answer to that question. No, and no. But they are desperate to push out these old regime DC Extended Universe films and plug them as part of DC Universe, because James Gunn keeps on calling them DC Universe, because everything's DC Universe all of a sudden and not DC Extended Universe, right? So it's all part of the same thing, right? Obviously, it's a blag because they're desperate for these movies to do as well as they can. But isn't the reality that these films will do no better than the Black Adam movie? Are they going to do any better than the Black Adam movie? Wait and see. As a DC fan, I surely hope so, because I'm not here for any personalities or any directors. I'm here for DC to be the best it can be. James Gunn has taken over a very difficult gig. And because of studio politics, and as I said to you, the bastards who were running it before are still behind the scenes there. And there's certain things he can't do. He would have loved to reboot and distance himself from the old DCEU. But there's certain things he doesn't have control over. So he's going to try and distance himself as much as he can from the old DCEU. And I'm going to explain to you why and how. I've already done that yesterday, but I can clarify those situations for you as well. So here's an exchange between James Gunn and a very naive fan who clearly doesn't watch my channel. Movies TV Mad at Movies TV Mad on Twitter, son, and Movies TV Mad on YouTube, and you will find yourself really informed. So here we go. So this is what this fan says. I think it's a fan. Maybe it's one of his, industry friends. I don't know. James, I'm seriously confused. Yeah, if you watched Movies TV Mad, my friend, you wouldn't be. How is Viola Davis still playing Amanda Waller? I mean, how don't you understand what's going on here? Aren't you rebooting the DCEU 100%? Oh dear. Did you really believe, you poor child, did you really believe they were rebooting the whole thing? I told you, this is a rebranded, the DCEU, the DC Universe, DCU, which is the rebranding, is a rebranded DCEU, DC Extended Universe. And how people are not intelligent enough to see through the BS, because some people actually believe everything these people tell them anyway. That includes Peacemaker, the whole Suicide Squad, and the Snyderverse. Like you said, Robert Pattinson, Batman, and Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is Elseworlds' story. Yeah, but that doesn't give any evidence of a full reboot. Anyway, James replied to this. James Gunn, the co-CEO of DC Studios, said this. Nope. Flash resets many things. Right, let's get this straight. Listen to what he said. Flash resets many things. Now, this excites me because I want to see many things being resetting. So he's trying to distance himself from the DCEU as much as he can. As I say, because of studio politics, he can't do that. Not all things. Some characters remain the same, some do not. So this is very interesting. Now, he's not going to reply to this. He don't reply to me anymore because I probably upset him months ago. Sorry about James. I was very, very triggered about the removal of Henry Cavill. So I do apologise about that. But anyway, I just want to know, is one of those things that changes or stays the same Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman? That's the $1 million question. So the whole of DC Twitter is now up in arms about this, that it's not a full reboot. Because, especially with Snyder fans, they want it to be, so they can keep on fighting for Snyderverse just to go straight into Netflix. Whether that's a possibility or not, I support that. My platforms support that campaign. It's an uplifting, beautiful campaign. I don't think it will be successful, but I hope for them, and for me, because I love the Snyderverse, to be successful. So James Gunn confirms, everyone, that not everything is changing. No shit, Sherlock. I've been telling you that for ages. So, but again, I don't know why people are upset or surprised about this. Walter Hamada wasn't going to reset the entire DC universe with the Flash movie either. He was going to reset some things and keep things the same. But that film was going to be very different in its conclusion, the Flash movie, under Walter Hamada. Now, we already know, and I explained on yesterday's DC Universe Daily, that they've done some different things to this movie. Now, the majority of the Flash movie has not been changed from Andy Muschietti's and Christina Hodson's vision. But the final act has been dramatically changed. So, no Michael Keaton Batman in the new timeline, but he's in a lot of the movie when they get to the Flashpoint universe. Sasha Calle isn't in the new timeline, but she's in the main part of the movie where Barry arrives and creates the Flashpoint universe. So I hope that you understand this. Now, what I'm telling you here is factual, because they don't want, James Gunn and Peter Safran don't want Michael Keaton as their main Batman. They're going to cast a much younger person. How younger, I don't know. Now, when James said that Damian Wayne is a tween, I just thought that meant teen. But someone on my live chat says that means about 11 or 12. Interesting. That's going to be a very interesting dynamic as well. So we'll see how that works out. So because of the first part of Chapter 1 slate, I think there's a lot of things we can garner from that and who's staying and who's not. Listen, I think with James Gunn, ignorance is bliss. Even bliss, should I say, blitz. We wish he could blitz the entire DC Extended Universe, as I say, because of studio politics, he can't. He's not allowed. If it was up to him, he would have a new Shazam, a new Aquaman, a new Wonder Woman, which I still think there's a possibility, and I explained yesterday. And certainly, he would not have Ezra Miller as the Flash. Yes, him and Peter are being very diplomatic about the Miller situation, that they're getting the help they need. They've got to be very careful here, because he is a very protected species in Hollywood. He is protected, but there's no way they're going to get away with keeping Ezra Miller as the Flash. He won't be the Flash. There may not be a Flash going forward for a very long time. So if office politics, if studio politics says to them, you can't replace Zachary Levi or Ezra Miller or even Jason Momoa, maybe Jason Momoa's one that really doesn't need changing, we'll see. He reckons he's not leaving that role. Again, we'll see. So I think Gal Gadot is going to be changed. I think they're casting a new Wonder Woman, but they'll use her as a multiversal version. I think they'll use, because he has to keep them, he's probably said, right, I'll keep you, but you're going to be a different version, and we'll give you some DC Elseworlds movies. Let's see what he does there. But I'm pretty sure Gal is being recast. So everyone is losing their shit because it's not a full reboot. I wanted a full reboot. I mean, who would align themselves to a disgraceful, embarrassing franchise that has failed at every level of its essence? That was about creatives making fan fiction rather than making great DC entertainment and adaptations for DC fans and the general audience. Who would want to align themselves with a franchise like that? No one, not James Gunn. And so he's confirmed that a lot of things are changing in The Flash. Some characters will change, won't be there, and these iconic DC characters in the future will be played by other actors, and some will stay the same. So what we don't know is what stays the same and what doesn't. But what he says here, what that actually means is that the Flash movie is absolutely vital for the future of DCU. Because clearly they've made the changes that Walter Hamada was going to make to the DC Extended Universe. Now, they've made changes to the end of this film to align with their plans for DC Universe. So I can't wait to see that version of the film and the changes they've made and what it means for the future of this franchise. James Gunn is doing the best that he can to move away from the old DC Extended Universe. Now, people are crying, saying he's only disabling the Snyderverse. Well, the Snyderverse was an issue. Whether you're a fan of it or not, he has to move away from the Snyderverse. You can be angry about that. If you just want to be here for a director, I would point to you and say, is that proper DC fandom? That you're here for a director rather than DC. So you never want DC to move on from Zack Snyder, a director that I love. A chapter in DC that I love. But when I talk about people doing fan fiction for their own ends, Zack Snyder was doing fan fiction for himself. And, a handful of people really enjoyed that. And I was a portion of those handful of people. But if you're asking me, do I just want to stay in the Snyderverse for all time? Or blight the rest of DC so Zack can finish his arc? Never. I like what James is doing. James is there to restructure as much as he can. But I'm going to repeat, if it was up to him, he would reset everything and distance himself as far away from the old DCEU as he could. But he can't do that because of studio politics. So he's doing the best that he can for himself, so he can be successful, for Peter, and for us, the DC fans, because he is a DC fan. He's not just saying he's a DC fan. If he says the Flash movie is one of the best superhero movies of all time, I believe him. I trust his word. Wherever you think of those historical tweets and, those situations, he's never actually lied. He's never told you he's going to reset the DC universe totally. He never told you that. He said the DCU is a new universe. And it is a new universe with new versions of these DC characters, new DC characters being introduced we've never seen before, and, different stories. And it is different to the DCEU. Basically, what we now know, as confirmation from what James says here, that DCU is a new timeline from the DC Extended Universe. That's what we can say. So even though studio politics are kind of stopping him from just distancing himself, just starting again without any flashpoints, without any explanation, he can't do that. He's doing what Walter Hamada was going to do, but in a different way. So DC Universe is a new timeline. I can tell you that now because of what I've read there. He's saying many things will change in the Flash movie. He's already said it when he spoke about the Flash movie. It's resetting the timeline. New timeline. DC Universe is a new franchise set in a new timeline. And that excites me. So, as I say, what you may say is he may try and ignore Jason's Aquaman and Ezra's The Flash for a long time. And because these characters have got movies this year, they're not something he has to deal with unless he wants them in his Justice League. He may not touch the Justice League situation for quite a long time. He may not even talk about doing Justice League for quite a long time. I believe what he may do here is treat the live-action universe how Bruce Timm treated the animated universe, where, you get movies, you just get movies. Sometimes they connect to what you're doing, sometimes they don't. And I think that's a very good direction to be in. Because I, for one, even though I would have preferred a full reboot, and when I realised a long time ago from what he was saying when he said, we're going to fix the things that don't work and keep the things that they don't, that do work, right? I made the assumption there. It was an obvious assumption. He told you there that this wasn't a full reboot. People complaining in the new DC universe that Amanda Waller, Viola Davis is still Amanda Waller. Why? If he ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, if he's going to continue with his Suicide Squad characters, and we'll wait and see if Waller is the last time that he's going to be working with that universe he built out. That might be the last of it. But if that continues, wouldn't you want to continue with stuff that you've created? If you were married to an actress, wouldn't you try and help her within her career? I've spoken about this before. Is what he's doing so wrong? I don't think so, because the Suicide Squad for me worked, and Peacemaker was a tremendous, incredible piece of work for me. Now, if you didn't enjoy it genuinely, good luck to you. And something else, if you don't want to come along on this James Gunn, Peter Safran, DC Universe and DC Elseworlds journey, and you want to keep on fighting for Zack or whatever you want to do, you are not required to do so. You are not required to join this journey, but you're also not required to shit talk James Gunn and call him names without any evidence and abuse him. Now, if you want to constructively criticize James, I'm sure he would welcome that, and so would I. So I don't want to align myself with people who are shit talking James. Now, sometimes I've overly criticized him and overly criticized the industry. I do that when I'm angry, and I stand by what I said, that this is a rebranded DC Extended Universe. But I think the changes are a lot more than I first thought when I was complaining about it not being a full reboot. This is a new timeline. This is what it is, a new timeline. So, and as he said, which excites me, a lot of things will change from the Flash movie. Now, what we don't know is, as I've already said, what is going to change. So, I don't really understand why people are angry about this. Yeah, I was angry at first about not a full reboot, but now I understand. Now I've spoken to the right people. Because of studio politics, that can't happen. So he's trying to distance himself from the old DCEU as much as he can. And you can look at the identity of his slate. This seems very, very different to the old DCEU. This slate, part 1 of chapter 1, proves that things are getting better. Bringing the Access media in for a press conference, one-on-ones, about their new direction. They want it to work. Admitting that the old leadership, was dicking Henry around and doing the wrong things and just offering people, DCIPs like they were mints. James Gunn has answered every question as directly and honestly as possible. Now, for months and weeks now, I've been boring on about James and Peter not giving us any context about the future. I want to thank James Gunn for giving us the context that I've been begging for such a long time. And what is that context? That finally we know that a lot of things in DC will change thanks to the Flash movie. Some actors will remain in those parts as those DC characters, and some won't. And then when we find out how those changes are implemented, we won't find everything out in the Flash movie, but it will give us a good idea of things, right? When Barry comes back to the new timeline, that'll be interesting. Who's there? Now, don't forget, this is another kind of, I suppose, red flag if you're that passionate about Gal's Wonder Woman. I love her Wonder Woman, but I'm quite happy to move on to another actor. Unfortunately, her partnership with Patty Jenkins really soiled her future as Wonder Woman, but it looks like James does want to go with younger actors. So anyway, if you look at it, we've heard from Grace Randolph and many others that Gal and Henry Cavill's cameos have been cut. But apparently Wonder Woman has been cut from the end of the Flash movie. The end of the Flash movie, the third act, is when Barry goes back to the reset timeline. Now, if Gal's Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, isn't there, basically you can say to yourself a thing that's very correct. Gal Gadot will no longer be playing Wonder Woman. Basically, we will see, whoever we see remaining in that timeline from the old DCEU, in that third act, in that final chapter of the Flash movie, whoever's there, is still in the DCEU, and whoever isn't there isn't part of the DCEU. So let's assume that Shazam will be there, that Aquaman will be there as Jason Momoa, and obviously it's Ezra Miller's film, so they will still be there as well. For now, until they decide what to do. And later down the line, they will decide if they will have a brand new DC Universe, Shazam, Flash, and Aquaman. I believe that they will, but these are decisions they don't have to get into very quickly. But I believe that David Zaslav thinks Wonder Woman is extremely important. So announcements on Wonder Woman's future will come in the next few months, maybe even before San Diego Comic-Con. And that's the thing that they really, really have to get their teeth around. So I hope you understand what's going on. We finally have context that the DC Universe is a rebranded DC Extended Universe, as I told you, and these things will be kind of changed. Whatever's going to change will change in the Flash movie. The Flash movie, when Barry returns to his original timeline, will be a changed timeline, which will now be DC Universe. He's calling everything DC Universe right now. But really, Shazam is the old DCEU universe, and so is a big portion of the Flash movie until he returns from Flashpoint to his original timeline, which actually is a reset timeline, which is then going to be DC Universe. I'm very, very excited about this. This doesn't upset me. I'm not upset that he's binning the Snyderverse actors or any of that. I don't care. I've got the Snyderverse films. I love the Snyderverse films. But I'm ready for DC to be successful and people to say, best fucking thing ever. Because we haven't had that as DC fans. It's time for the world to start celebrating DC. And I believe that James and Peter are the men to do this. And I think David Zaslav is turning Warner Brothers Discovery and what kind of studio it is around. It's a studio that's made very few billion-dollar movies. Not just superhero movies, but in general. This is an in-debt, failed studio. And David Zaslav built up the Discovery brand, the Discovery Plus streaming service. The man is a very good CEO. And basically this guy is Bob Iger in his pomp, in his peak. And I believe in him. I believe in James and Peter. I've kind of outlined the mistakes of DC of the past. I love what Zack did, but he also was being very selfish and basically making his own fan fiction. You're here to serve a company. They're giving you their money so they can make money, and you didn't care about that. That's where he was wrong. That's where he was selfish. And now we have in a man like James Gunn, someone who understands he's working for a company who want to make loads of money, but they also want him to do the best that he can for the DC brand. Protecting the DC brand is the number one thing that David Zaslav has been saying. And as much as possible, creating a new timeline via the Flash movie, which they were going to do anyway. But I think the changes are probably a lot more dramatic now that James is here. They have made changes to that third act of the Flash movie pretty clearly. And then we move on as much as possible. And in the end, all these actors that were cast originally won't be playing these iconic roles. Now, finally today, I want to move on to the announcement that James Gunn is writing and maybe directing Superman Legacy. Now, of course, as a Superman fan, he's my number one character in fiction. I don't think I'd be here today if it wasn't for Superman's inspiration, especially Christopher Reeve's portrayal as that character. There's something about the word legacy that concerns me. And that really is that legacy is something somebody leaves once they die. Also, James Gunn has been teasing All-Star Superman, which is a story where Superman dies at the end of that movie. So I do have a little theory that I'm going to impart on you, and it's a concern about Superman Legacy. I think that James Gunn will write a great movie, whatever it is. I believe maybe that Superman may be off-world in this film, and this film may have nothing to do with Superman, or he may be dead or die at the beginning of this film. Then his son, maybe John Kent or Connor Kent, whoever, will take on that mantle, will take on that Superman legacy. And that's why the film's called Superman Legacy. I'm good, right? I'm no pie eater, am I? I'm good. I'm not just another YouTuber, the number one DC YouTuber, and that's why that's me. So that's what I think. But am I right? I'm just concerned why it's called Superman Legacy. The only other way that it is a film genuinely starring Superman if Superman is creating his own legacy within this movie. Now, the description of this film is that Superman is about Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage and, and his human heritage. And, he was brought up as a human being, as a young boy, so he feels human, but he has got that Kryptonian heritage. The Kryptonians want him. His father wanted him, to lead the planet and inspire Earth. That's why he was sent to Earth, as well as saving his son's life as well. So it seemed, I have to look back at that. Does he ever mention the names Clark Kent as the character who has to balance his Kryptonian heritage and his human heritage? Very interesting. So I may be wrong with my concerns, but I am concerned that this is a film not starring Superman. Now, of course, this would be very controversial from James Gunn. This would make Superman fans maybe just as or more upset than the next snapping moment from Zod in Man of Steel. No Superman in a film titled Superman Legacy, and plus he's giving, he's making people think that Superman, this is Superman's movie. He says Superman comes to theatres in 2025. So, in all intents and purposes, I'm probably worrying about nothing, and I'm sure James isn't trying to pull a fast one. I hope, fingers crossed, but because he's been teasing All-Star Superman and he continues to keep on posting All-Star Superman pictures in his Instagram, this does concern me that either Superman will be dead in this movie or Superman dies at the end of this movie, and what does that actually mean? Will there be a Henry Cavill connection with the new timeline? Will he be the father of the new Superman? That's going to be interesting as well. Because if you were a thinker, you see, this is why I think Henry Cavill not being Supes anymore is all part of the studio politics I've been talking about. Because you're teasing All-Star Superman. Think about this for a minute, right? You have a film starring Henry Cavill, his final Superman movie called All-Star Superman. Now, bear with me. He's now, by the end of the film, Lois gives birth to a son. At the end of the film, Henry Cavill's Superman dies, as he does in All-Star Superman. Then in the next Superman movie, John Kent's around, or whatever, whoever they choose it to be, right? Now think about this for a minute. Then he's the New Age Superman. Then you call that film Superman Legacy. That's what I would have done. Because he keeps on teasing All-Star Superman. And I'm really concerned, because I love All-Star Superman, but I'm also concerned that Superman dies at the end of the story. I don't want Superman to die. I don't want the DCU to be built on Superman's legacy, as great as that sounds. I want the DCU to have an actual Superman going through it. Now, we know that Zaslav has demanded that, Superman, Wonder Woman and Batman are so important. So I would assume that Zaslav wouldn't agree with killing off Superman in the first film. But they may be using Superboy going forward, and that's my theory on that. So please comment down below on the things I've discussed on today's video. Do you think a reset in Flash movie, but not a full reboot, is good enough for DC Universe? I think it is, and I think it will be exciting, and I think the changes will be right. He's trying to move away from the old DCEU as much as he can. What do you think about my theory about Superman Legacy? Is Superman actually in this film, or is it a next-gen Superman movie based on John Kent, Superman's son? We will soon find out. Be very interesting. Now, for me, if that's the case, he should have been honest at the very beginning. Because if this comes out later on, people are going to be angry. But if you manage the information yourself and you let it out and you do a synopsis and you say, Superman is dead, he's gone off world, and this film is about John Kent. And that's why it's called Superman Legacy. If he's planning to do this, he should have told us he was planning to do this. Because, and I'm kind of criticizing him about something I don't know that he's done. He could be genuinely making just a Superman movie. apparently 2 years into his life as Superman on Earth. We'll have to wait and see. But that's my concern about Superman Legacy. Of course, as a Superman fan, I'm hyped that Superman and Supergirl will be introduced in Chapter 1 of the new DC Universe, which absolutely is a new timeline. You know, it's connected because it spans out from the original DCEU. I actually think that's a good idea, that the DCEU will still be kind of the sister of the DCU, and you never forget it, but they're moving on from that. I think this is the best way, considering the studio politics there that, you know, James and Peter could have done, and I'm very excited for the future. This has been Thursday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife, please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. I am beautiful, aren't I? Shut up. Don't say it. Anyway, I will be back later on tonight when I'm live with you. So come in, interact, you know, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me your concerns and about the new DCU. Tell me what you're excited about. What part of the slate are you hyped for? I'll be here live later on. So until we see each other again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.